A few days ago, I posted on Twitter a screenshot of a web shell. I said with this little caption, hey, look at this cutesy little web shell. It's so small, it's so pretty, it's so dainty, it's so cute. And it's from vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange servers that were patched literally over a year ago. And I think web shells are honestly some really interesting and cool stuff to dive into because it is means for an attacker, an adversary, a threat actor, or a hacker to maintain access over a long period of time. It is persistence, after all, because at any point, the threat actor could then reach back out to the web shell with HTTP request parameters like get or post methods, and then tell it to do whatever it might want, carry out its marching orders. Now, web shells often slip past preventative security measures like antivirus or EDR because they're just so small and stealthy, and it's not always easily to be kind of understood and unraveled, especially when they are obfuscated or kind of manipulated and the data and code is transformed to camouflage or blend in, or at least be harder to decipher from a human analyst eye. Now, if you watch my videos, you know that I love playing with some obfuscated code, but with scripting languages or with scenarios where you just have straight source code, it's very, very different from some malware analysis that you might do digging it up against hardcore compiled binaries, right? We're not cracking open IDA Pro or Ghidra, digging into some disassemblers and debuggers, looking through the instruction set of a binary. But if you're interested in that, hey, let me please segue to today's sponsor, Offset Training Solutions, or Offset with a 0 for the O. And their Zero to Auto course gets into some of that super duper cool reverse engineering and malware analysis. With that said, we can roll the clip for that sponsor. Huge thanks. Zero to Auto offers in-depth and quality training on all things malware analysis and reverse engineering. You learn to cut through malware samples, understand the threat landscape, and automate your workflow. Within the training, you get access to 25 hours of video content covering cryptographic algorithms, initial malware stagers, malware evasion techniques, core malware functionality like for banking trojans, worms, web injects, and more. You dig into the exploitation process and learn what exactly is needed for professional threat intelligence. Included with the course is a 10% discount on an IDA Pro named license or an IDA Home license, a 3-month premium plan to the Any.Run sandbox, and access to an exclusive Discord server where you can collaborate with other students, get support for training material, and receive new malware challenges. Right now, the course has over 1,500 students registered and always have access to new malware to cut up and learn from. Of course, the training comes with a final exam and a course certification, with both a theoretical segment and a hands-on practical challenge, where you reverse engineer custom malware and craft a report based off of your findings. The Zero to Auto training comes from some seriously big names in the industry, to include Vitaly Kremez, Daniel Bunce, and Jason Reeves. I'm sure you have seen them sharing incredible research and threat intel, and this is your opportunity to learn from some of the best. Check out the links in the description to jump into some Zero to Auto training right now, and get 20% off by using the code MALWARE at checkout. If you're perhaps looking for something slightly less advanced, they're also in the process of remastering their original beginner malware analysis course, which pre-registration is now open. If you head to offset.net/beginner, that O being a 0, you'll be able to register early for the course and grab an early bird discount. Huge thanks to Offset Training Solutions for sponsoring this video. Alrighty, so in this video, I want to play with a different web shell. I want to play with one that was sent along to me from a viewer. And hey, actually, please let me add the note here. Please keep sending me malware. Please keep sending me weird, random, just sketchy stuff that you find. It's a lot of fun. I have a ginormous backlog of things that you've sent along to me, and I promise I will get to them some point, slowly, eventually, but just keep them coming. It adds to, the pile of content that we get to play with, and maybe someday in a live stream or when I can kind of dive into this more frequently, we'll just keep churning them out and see what we can get into. With that, please keep sending me malware. So back to what I was saying, in this video, we're going to explore a simple, small WordPress or PHP web shell. And, enough of me rambling. Let's get to the computer screen. Let's dive into the action here and start to have some fun. Okay, so I am inside of my Remnux Linux virtual machine, or the reverse engineering malware Linux distribution. I'm gonna hit Control-Alt-T on my keyboard and fire up a terminal here, and I do have a directory created for me called CPL Webshell. And this actually is a file, cpl.php, that was sent along by a viewer. In fact, let me see if I can track down the email. And this viewer, again, had sent this some time ago. I think this is even back from like April of 2021. But they said, "Hey John, tripped over your YouTube channel, really enjoy and learn a lot from what you're showing, doing, and talking about. Thanks so much. I wish I knew what training path you took to learn all of what you know." Hey man, I super appreciate it. I know a lot of it is trial and error until you find or get something that is helpful. Reason for my email: we found a malware file in one of our websites that's attached, and I thought you might want to take a look at the content. I've decoded the cpl.php file once, but there seems to be another 3 big chunks that don't decode the same way. I'm not a PHP programmer, but I do understand and write in another of other languages, many of which are now dead. I'm a little bit old. Hey man, there's nothing wrong with that. That's all right. Finding this malware was not easy. We scanned the site using probably 15 or more web-based WordPress malware scanners and ClamAV, and only 2 scanners even reported that there was an issue. So that is the cpl.php file that we have, a web shell located on a WordPress file. So let me go ahead and open this thing up in Sublime Text and let's see what we're getting into. Okay, jumping right into a big blob of base 64, and let's take a look at this syntax here and see what we're going to end up using. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-P on my keyboard to set the syntax to PHP and Sublime Text, but because this line is way too stinking long, it looks like it's not even going to do some of that syntax highlighting for me. So never mind. We will want to go ahead and extract this and get this data out here. If folks are tracking, you'll notice that it ends up calling the eval function. That eval function is going to evaluate code, right? Go ahead and execute things. And this is super duper common for scripting languages or even PHP and others that will go ahead and just process this as needed. gzinflate will go ahead and inflate what would have been deflated gzip data, I believe. I might have that wrong, or just raw zlib stuff. We'll let PHP unravel this for us ultimately, because it is going to be pulled from some base 64 encoded data. Now, this whole chunk is what we want to be able to play with, except we don't want this thing to detonate. We want PHP to really unravel this for us, but not eval it out. I want it to simply echo it out. So let me see if I can save a copy of this. We'll call it just, I don't know, stage1.php modified. How about that? And we'll change again this eval to an echo statement, so that way it just displays it out on the standard output and onto the screen here. Now I can get back to my terminal and I can just honestly use, hey, let's kick that thing over to PHP. Let's let it run our stage1 modified.php, and boom, all of this stuff is just spat out onto the screen. In fact, there's a whole lot here, and that should be a little bit of fun to review for us. Let me go ahead and redirect that output to stage2.php. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now open up stage2.php, and let's see if I can save a copy of this as stage2 modified, just so I had or whatever have some scrappy version control. I want to keep the original file that we had, and then any tinkering that I might do, I'd like to keep and maintain in here. With that said, a lot of this looks pretty jank. It is out of order sometimes, some cases, not having like the most sensible indentation or white space. So let me see if I can beautify this. I'll go ahead and open up a Firefox web browser, and then I'll see if I can find just a simple online Google search. Give me a PHP beautifier. Looks like there's some super simple cheesy thing from beautifytools.com. Hey, whatever, let's just slap it in. And then beautify PHP. There's the button. Please wait while we are beautifying your code. Thank you very much. We'll grab that, copy and paste it, and just slap it back into our index here. That didn't do a very good job, not gonna lie. Anyway, because this is going to be put through an eval statement, we know that ultimately, in fact, it just needs that PHP tag in the front to try and clean that up. Yeah, there we go. That makes it a lot better with some proper indentation here. The PHP tag at the beginning denotes that, okay, this would traditionally be through a PHP file, but since this was ran as a second layer as part of what would have been stage 1 through that eval statement, it's not going to include that data. This is just the raw text or the string that would have been passed as the argument to that eval function. So we check if the server agent, is actually going to match an MD5 hash. You can see that there's a hard-coded MD5 hash here, and that actually is going to let the user agent of the client connecting this web page basically act as a key or a password, or to denote, hey, what exactly does the user agent have to be for this page to even load? Because if it's not equal to that, it just dies. It craps out, it stops rendering, it won't execute the whole rest of this application. Now, to note, it just prints out this MD5 hash as the argument to die, which isn't extremely useful to us. I'm curious if we just would happen to be able to crack that with like a stupid dumb crack station. I really, really doubt it because it's probably some other special key, but it's worth just slapping it in here, filling out this CAPTCHA. Oh goodness, I am not a robot, I promise. Stop it, I am not a robot. Okay, crack hashes. Nope. Totally not going to be found there. I'm sure it's a much longer string than a simple word, but it's worth exploring. Anyway, this does set up a guard or some sort of little boundary to denote, hey, I only want the threat actor, the hacker, the adversary that knows the secret password, that knows the special key, using it as their user agent to be able to even access and use this web shell. And then it goes ahead and sets some configuration values within PHP, like you might see in the php.ini file. It turns off logging. It says error log is going to be null, log error is set to 0, max execution time 0, etc., and error reporting set to 0. Ends up using some headers here that might just be part of the response in returning to this page. And then we have some functions defined called getPerm, based off of a file argument. Now, these are going to end up probably being utility functions that will be used throughout the rest of this code. So we don't need to dive in to all of this right now, but it's interesting in that we're checking out some of the permissions on this file and maybe determining whether or not it is read, write, or executable, or a sticky bit, or other things that might help us get a lay of the land as the adversary here, trying to determine what is part of this target. Other functions, WSO view size. I'm assuming this is going to take in a value S that's checking if it's an integer, and then printing converting that and passing that to a string here, and then determining based off of that value, what are we going to end up printing out here based off of gigabytes or megabytes or kilobytes, presumably being, a size of bytes represented in a more human readable method. And it does put this in some HTML to add specific fonts here and colors that, maybe make this a little bit more clear as to whether or not it's a big, ginormous file like a gig or a couple megabytes or kilobytes. So we'll note that as just, again, some convenience functions. And then we have get magic quotes GPC, strip slashes, retrieving cookies and post values. I wonder if that does anything interesting. And then it's actually building its own functions to create the functionality of put file contents. That's a little bit interesting. Same thing for set magic quote runtime. I'm curious what that thing actually is. Let me go back to my Uncle Google here and go ask, what is that? Gets the active configuration settings of magic quotes runtime. And this is a deprecated function, which is probably why they're trying to create it naturally within the code. That might be the same way for some of the other functions that they do. They're just trying to bake in the functionality so that the code can continue to run while they might call that function, whether or not it actually existed or not. Magic quotes and runtime, again, deprecated and removed, but functions that return data from any sort of external source, including databases and text files, will have quotes escaped with the backslash. Ooh, a little bit interesting, and that might do or manipulate some of the data that's returned from other functions. So probably why they're just building in that functionality here. But there is another interestingly named function that's going to be tracking some cookies here, Dolly work or hello Dolly. I'm super duper interested why Dolly is seemingly a theme. I wonder if we can use that to track down some other IOCs or indicators of compromise or just other similar samples. And then if that doesn't exist, then we go ahead and remove ourself. Hence the name of the function, right? And we try to remove other potentially malicious web shells, I'm going to assume, or they may have just backdoored some other pages within WordPress. Some of the usual, specific files used within WordPress. And then it just closes itself out with the die function. And echo header, we actually have an image, like a GIF included as base64. That's kind of weird. I would like to pull that out. It's a background image. It's like literally setting that as the background. I totally want to grab that and see what this thing looks like. Copy and pasted that, and that is just some other CSS defined for the page. That must be the very, very beginning of the return page here. Let me go back to my shell and echo. Actually, you know what? Let's just call it subble background.gif base64. I called it base65. Let's do that again. Renamed it to base64. Perfect. Now let's decode that and redirect that to background.gif. Now, can I take a look at what that might be? Do I have Eye of Gnome? Eye of Gnome? EOG, please? No. What is it? Is it Ristretto? Let me just open up Nautilus. There we go. This is our background, and ImageMagick is not doing all that good with this. It looks like it has some skull icons, some PHP logo icons, and some WordPress stuff. So nothing huge. Maybe that's kind of fun, but not a big deal. Then we are going to end up outputting scripts onto this page. We define a function to set a cookie, which is probably just a convenience thing within JavaScript, and then get cookie, which will again retrieve a cookie value within JavaScript. And then we'll use filter to retrieve some filters and maybe use the date module to determine what we're going to end up showcasing or not with our filter. Function to force a new location. Interesting. Trying to replace the location to worker.php FSDS FFFSS. Gotcha. Fast, presumably fast scan. Paranoid scans. I'm curious what these all might do. The client-side code I don't have that much of a concern with. But there's other things that might happen here, again, with those other function names that do some weird animation stuff. That's peculiar. Work methods, well, looks like that is what you might be able to use as the instructions for what you want this web shell to do. Whether it's going to be retrieving a directory, getting a file, running code, or passing in parameters, all those things could presumably be controlled in JavaScript here. And it has some workers that will go ahead and do these things. Now we have other functions that we might end up checking for, seeing if they are existing in the PHP runtime that this is being used in, or the version number, like, hey, do we have OpenSSL verify or curl init? Presumably, this is going to end up using curl to, again, reach out to other remote locations and do interesting different things with them. ToWorker looks like it's going to end up taking the actual directory that this file is in, presumably a WordPress location, exploding out the file path to get that full location, and then try to create some worker tasks to do things, building out the directory and then kind of plopping other files in other locations, correct? It returns to write, so it looks like it uses some base64 encoding there. That's a little bit odd to me. I don't exactly know what they're accomplishing with just kind of spitting that out. But otherwise, there is the table that ends up creating everything again for the interface as to how this might work. Paranoid scans, filtering on information, and building forms, styles, etc., etc. Oh, this must be the file manager. I'm presuming it's actually going to end up like showing you all the files within the current directory on the target. So that way it looks like, hey, some nice, very, very user-friendly and big interface to be able to click around and do unique things on this target. This is a pretty versatile web shell, right? And this goes on for a little bit of time. Again, just kind of presenting all these files, building them out as a table. And that's why you saw it, okay, get the file size or check the permissions, see the date when it would have been modified, accessed, created, the typical file metadata that you might be interested in. Edit file as another function where we might be able to modify something. Delete file as some other functionality. And here's an interesting one. Here's another exec PHP function. So this can sort of work as that remote access Trojan in a way. Like, again, the web shell to run and execute more commands. There's that eval statement, of course. You're checking if a C HTTP parameter is present, and then it ends up checking where we might go ahead and put a file here. Looks like there is a script, again, using some JavaScript here, but also weirdly enough, including PHP in this. Checking like WordPress user stuff, like trying to see, okay, can we get some of the WordPress admins or plugins all to be explored, and get user by email secfau374@mailmail.com. And there it tries to delete that user. Delete evil is some of the instructions that this might use. I'm super curious, and again, we might want to take note of that to do some more Googling and research and dig into that a little bit more. Here is our make worker function, and this looks like another ginormous blob of base 64. This goes on for quite some time, but it ends up ultimately spitting that out to the worker.php file. And that's using that file put contents function that's defined up here. So we could grab this if we really, really wanted to. We could explore and decode that. Let me save that as a worker.php.b64. Very slick. We'll dig into that in a moment, but I do want to explore some more of this file, see if there's anything else interesting. Looks like there's a download function. chmod to change modifications of permissions on files. There are a whole lot of other functions here to kind of explore and dig into specific WordPress functionality. Like, are there WordPress files that it might end up either seeing or using or recreating or working with? And then it offers that all to be able to play with this thing. And there's that Dolly, again, reference here. Here's Dolly code, again, base 64, presumably. So let's go ahead and grab that, and let's see what they do with this thing. Let me save this as Dolly code.php. And we're looking if the WordPress plugin directory exists, if we have write access to it. Ooh, could we see if we could maybe modify or delete some files with that unlink function, like a hello.php inside of the plugin directory? Oh, and it sees, that's interesting how far it could go with this. Even an interesting function, update WordPress, that might update WordPress based off of the current PHP version. Checking out, what are we going to end up grabbing another WordPress version for? And again, it looks like it actually uses curl to download this from carwashleusden.nl, WordPress in the version. I don't know if this is still alive. Let's go see. Let me see if I can go ahead and curl this down. That would be looking for wp.zip, correct? Are you alive? No. That URL just might be dead. I don't mind. I'm okay with it. I can Google. I'll fire it up in a web browser. We'll see what's going on with that thing. Nope, looking dead. Can I dig that URL or that domain name really here? Nope, not currently. Obviously, NSLookup would just do the very, very same. Not tracking that domain. Then we go ahead, and if we were able to download this, again, maybe this file was from a year ago, I'm sure there are different variations of this, we would download that zip archive, go ahead and extract it, and then do some other peculiar stuff with other functions that are defined here, like debugging WordPress, presumably, right? And after all these functions are defined, we eventually get to see what this Webshell does naturally. All those convenience functions have been built out, and we check if the count of the post arguments is equal to 0, or if the count of the get parameters are equal to 0. Or and really here. So if it's not providing any instructions via HTTP request methods, then it goes ahead and echoes all of this out with its header, with its scripts, with its functions, and its big form and table, like the file manager and everything that's necessary and needed to go ahead and display this page like interactive command and control, or that's the wrong word there, remote access Trojan or web shell to gain control of this endpoint and do interesting things. Now, if an argument actually is provided, if we take the else branch of this logic, then we do a switch and test against the A argument. Again, using the request PHP variable to be specifying, it could be either a get parameter or a post parameter, but then we'll call different functions that we've kind of defined up here, like edit, save, or manipulate some of the file managers and files here, delete files, etc., or execute PHP and others with this action, which I'm assuming is going to be that A argument or variable there. That's kind of peculiar. And that is the real instructions. That's how this does what it might do. But now I'm super curious, what does our worker PHP base64 and our Dolly code end up doing? Let me go ahead and move our Dolly code to that dolly code.b64. And again, let's base64 decode our Dolly code into Dolly code there. Let's do the very, very same with our worker. Redirect that to a worker code. .php, and let's take a look at what Dolly code is going to do. Only 106 lines, so nothing wild here. Ooh, this is a supposedly WordPress plugin. It says, hello Dolly. This is not just a plugin, it symbolizes the hope and enthusiasm of an entire generation, summed up in 2 words, sung most famously by Louis Armstrong. Hello Dolly. When it's activated, you'll randomly see a lyric from Hello Dolly in the upper right of your admin screen on every page. That is pure art. and that's what it does. Why do we have this? Why is this included here? Okay. There's Dolly. Did it do something with that? Like we had other functions to see if Hello Dolly was doing its thing. And then, whoa, update option, update Dolly CSS. This looks like other base64 code, but it doesn't look like it's malicious. Did I like completely skip this? Update option Dolly CSS. What is Dolly CSS doing? That's it. It doesn't do anything else other than that. Let's just slap this on the command line and see what does that give us. Whoa! That has a couple more little indicators of compromised websites in external locations to look at that are a little bit weird. Let me redirect that to dollycss.php. How about that? Let's see what you do. What? All right, let's add a little PHP tag in here so we get our syntax highlighting. Let's do a hello check signature, and we have a public key included here using some OpenSSL stuff. Decoding the signature, that's been cooked out and put together. Hello action. Whoa, that's going to do some unserializing data that presumably can be used to execute code, of course, correct? Like you can execute serialized data and have it do things with hosts. And there's more actions here. Hello, delete post. Dolly posts. Is it trying to masquerade this super silly and easy Hello Dolly plugin with CSS code, supposedly, right? That is actually going to be executed maliciously? Like this is genuine. This is the original Dolly CSS that they have here. And then they clobber it? They rewrite that function. That's what they do. Update option, changing. What does update option do? We define that. Do we not? Oh, it's going to be if we have that function? No. It's not checking that. What? PHP update option, please. What do you do? Oh, it's a WordPress. It's a WordPress function. Updates the value of an option that was already added. So yeah, it might very well be kind of just switching up some of the supposedly CSS file with this malicious PHP code that's going to continue to do more sketchy stuff. Update option Dolly posts. Hello update. Am I wrong there? Hello, Dolly, PHP, Freemius. This is real. There's a GitHub repository for this thing, and this is the original source code that we were kicking around with. What is the Hello World Dolly WordPress plugin extravaganza? Should you delete it? 2015. One of our users recently asked, what does this thing do? There's a video for this. It just puts the Hello Dolly values there. Anyway, let's get back to the code here because it is presumably like letting you insert or create posts and control like content on the WordPress website, but it also has execute capabilities and make shell potential capabilities that do this Dolly work shenanigans. And of course, Dolly work will end up, again, evaluating gzip base64 encoded data, running all of these actions in that capability above for every single post argument that's provided. Hello script methods are defined up here. And let's see if these are still alive. Wirewus.com, Avocats, Vacavilla, Odoo. Are any of these still alive? Curl that down. That one's still alive. Oh, that's dumb. There's just no like cheesy cookie thing, but it does try to go to claim your prize. Take your prizes.life with some unique keys and encodings here. Let's go down the rabbit hole, shall we? All right, I don't want to dig into that right now. I don't want to. What about the next one? Let me check it out. Also still alive. Other file ones. Are these genuine? Are those real? Oh no, that one's alive but doesn't have that file anymore. I.php, I presume, might be other just weird wacky stuff. Another alive. That brings me to the exact same take your prize as life. Another one up here. Nothing. That one's dead. Does that page still exist? What do you got? Move permanently. Going to odoo20.fr. What do you got? Follow the redirect. What? All right, I think it's Control-Tac L to follow the redirect. Nah, yeah, I guess that's dead. So, whatever. Okay, that's still pretty wacky. That's still pretty weird. I don't know if I'm misinterpreting or misunderstanding this. I know I do these things like on the fly, so I could totally just be like blazing past something that I'm not making sense of. But what does our worker do? I think that's the last stone unturned here. But, jeez. This is exactly what you would expect it to be. It is just PHP code to be able to do things. And there are some other oddities in other URLs that it might play with. Mini Manny? Whoa, GitHub links. What do you got? Okay, I kind of want to check these out, not gonna lie. As much as I didn't want to keep going down the rabbit hole, I would like to. Whoa, check it out. Gidgely 3 web PHP shell back in 2015. But what are these arrays being used for? Datecenter.com as a URL. Other random shenanigans. This is a disaster. My God. What is this supposed to be? Regular expressions? I mean, yes, all of these code segments have been, and file names and everything in this array has been regular expressions, hence a lot of these, but there's just weirdness in here. What do you do with this array? You define all of this stuff, and what do you do with this? More random domains. Man, the internet is a wild place. Okay, end replace section, and then we had more arrays in our paranoid scan, dead letter, end work, check, get task number, get task. These are just works. It is the worker unit, correct? So it's trying to do some tasks and it will add task, etc. Get URL, make log. And basically it's just, I think this file was created as a temporary thing so that it could have something specific to do and then follow out those commands and executions and then clean itself up. But whether it's looking through a directory or other miscellaneous things, it just does this. And it gets a random tag appended on, so it never caches any of the locations that you go to, because that way you always get the latest and your web browser doesn't cache it. That's a trick that is oftentimes done with web-based stuff. You might see like the time be appended as the URL parameter or just a random number. It's so that it doesn't cache it. All right, there were some interesting GitHub things in here, right? Laggerghost.github. Hex.github.io/marijuana. What? Plugin name, CMS map, WordPress shell. So some of these, I'm curious which one of them is this. What is this CPL shell? Because we did see this Jiggly 3 Web PHP shell 2015. What are you? Check it out. Here's a GitHub. This looks pretty similar to what we had just a moment ago, but it is using eval and then using hex codes here to include more base64 encoded stuff. But so this is probably going to be typing out the base64 decode shenanigans that it might need to execute that out. So that's not exactly what we were looking for, but this should probably be reported. So we could do that once I'm done recording this video. What are you doing, Manisso? One day you'll leave this world behind, so live a life you remember. Deploying WordPress shells for long-term persistent access and malicious activity. Webshell orb with PHP 7. This is where I just go down the rabbit hole. Oh, and here's some gist that actually digs into this. This is the cpl.php that does the seemingly similar thing that we did. Yeah. In fact, this is the exact same code that we just saw, so this is how it tracked it down. Does this have different URLs at the end here? No, it doesn't have any of them. It's kind of weird. But this is also the... Here, I'll full screen. You can see the original CPL uncompressed. Same exact hash. So this is the same sample that we've been playing with. This fella says, hey, one of my websites running WordPress got hacked and found this file uploaded. Do you have any idea how this could happen? There's a vulnerability with the WordPress file manager plugin. This is back in 2020. The malware virus adds its snippets to all JS, HTML, and PHP files and changes their permissions to 777 or world readable, writable, and executable. It also adds its snippets to the WordPress database on the post table, every single entry, so you need to clean up your database as well. You can read more about this exploit on WordFence. Whoa. 700,000 WordPress users affected by zero-day vulnerability in the File Manager plugin. The morning on September 1st, 2022, the WordFence threat intelligence team was alerted to the presence of a vulnerability being actively exploited in File Manager, a WordPress plugin with over 700,000 active installations. This vulnerability allowed unauthenticated users to execute commands and upload malicious files on a target site. That sounds bad. So this talks a little bit about the potential vulnerability, where this all came from, and again, the ginormous attack surface that is WordPress and WordPress plugins, but it doesn't specifically get into this malware and this web shell and this attacks here. This scapulation, I'd have to think, and I would have to go look through again those other lines of code, if it's injecting itself to all snippets of JavaScript, HTML, and PHP files. It looked like, it very well did that and had the capability to do that. But again, I don't mean to be tossing those claims out as I've just scrolled through this within an hour. Like, this is pretty cursory. This is an endless rabbit hole, but it's wild and kind of crazy to see all the capability that could be built in to this original gunk of nonsense that is just even simply base64 encoded, hey, gzip, deflated, inflated, whatever, and then executed and kind of powering up and doing everything within all these files, potentially the database, HTML and JavaScript included, to build out this dynamic interface for that control on the endpoint and target. So I've been rambling for way too long. I think this turned out to be a significantly longer video than it should have been, but it was just kind of fun to explore. There wasn't a whole lot of de-obfuscating that we needed to do, more than just, hey, whatever, some beginning base64 and then things here and there. And then it was just kind of exploring and poking around. I hope that was fun to watch, if just a little bit. And again, I hope it drives home that idea, man, web shells for persistence can just do a heck of a lot and implant and put their hooks and claws and talons in this victim and target and eventually be used for persistence and later long-term access from a threat actor, adversary, and hacker. Even if it's that small, simple thing, just run a command, or it's like, yo, you've got the full suite, you've got the Ferrari, look at the file system, edit, modify files, do anything, and even hide in Hello Dolly lyrics, I guess. So, hope that was a good time. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please do go check out our sponsor, Offset Training Solutions, Offset with a zero, and the Zero to Auto training platform. They have some incredible stuff where you can dig into some hardcore, real malware analysis and binaries with disassemblers and debuggers and other sweet stuff that's super smart. That's way, way over my head. But thanks again, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.